Good morning, and welcome to this morning's webinar. This is Victoria Beal with the Ohio LTAP Center, and I'm so pleased to have my colleague David Orr, who is the director of the New York LTAP Center, also known as the Cornell Local Roads Program, joining us this morning, and he is going to provide you a webinar on pavement preservation, roads in jeopardy. So as we get things started, I want to go over just a couple of housekeeping items, and then I'll turn everything over to David. We do have for you in the handout section a PDF of today's slides. However, I'd encourage you to download it and save it, and just pay attention to the webinar. It will move pretty quickly, and you don't want to miss anything. Also, we have a question box, and it should be on your GoToWebinar panel. We would encourage you to enter any questions you have in the question box, and I'll be happy to read those off as they come in and as we have a moment in the webinar itself. So with that, I believe that's all I have. David, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Thanks.
Okay. So if you haven't found it yet, the controls to find the handout, to find the question panel, if they're not expanded, just look for an orange arrow on your screen and click on that. It should expand. And then you can see the question pod and also the place to download the handout. We're going to do this as a little bit of a game show and have a little bit of fun. So definitely don't want to read ahead because that sort of ruins the experience for you. For those who are wondering, again, in New York State, this is going to be worth one professional development hour for engineers. Only one person, the person who is actually registered, will be able to get it, and it will count as a course for those who care. What you're going to need to do is, after you've taken this, there'll be a survey at the very end that Victoria will remind you about. You'll need to take that survey, and then you will get a certificate of attendance from her. You'll need to email that to us. If you're not in New York State or don't need a New York State professional development hour, you'll need to check with your local LTAP center for the rules in your particular state. Now, in terms of some additional reference materials, a lot of the materials that I've pulled for this particular workshop come from our publications library. So you can go on our website, just go to the main website, look for the library and the publications. And the two in particular I would focus on are asphalt paving principles and pavement maintenance. Okay. So hopefully we're gonna have a little bit of fun, and hopefully your roads don't look like this. I'm hoping your roads are in better shape, but it comes down to pavement preservation. Okay. Now the National Center for Pavement Preservation, they're out of Michigan State, and they like to define pavement preservation as the right treatment in the right place at the right time. You could also use this definition for asset management. You could use this definition for lots of things. And it's really true. And it's not just looking at preserving the pavement with minor repairs, it's really all of the repairs that we do, everything from doing nothing all the way down to total reconstruction. And so the idea is to not just pick a repair because we can afford it or pick a repair because it's expedient, but to choose the right treatment, to let the road tell you what needs to be done, fix the disease, don't fix the symptoms, don't cover them up, because if you cover them up, they're going to come right back. For instance, here's a classic example of a roadway crack. Looks like it's a load-induced crack, and if you went in there and tried to crack repair it, it's not going to work. The crack is too wide, and you got to figure out where the crack came from in the first place. Now, yes, it's in the wheel path, but if you look carefully, it's wandering, and it turns out they've tried to crack repair it, and it doesn't last. This is actually a frost heaving kind of crack. So we need to make sure we understand that and do the right repair. In this case, they need to fix the drainage on the upstream side. And we'll see if my pen works today. Yep, they need to fix the drainage over here to keep the water coming in from the side. Otherwise, they're going to have problems. Okay. Or here's another one. I got a phone call, went out to visit a town, and they were going to put an overlay on this road because they had a state grant to help them pay for an overlay. And this is the highway garage right there. And much like in Ohio, the county highway officials are elected, here our town highway officials are elected. And that was an election year. That would have gone over really well when it failed in just a few months because of the drainage underneath. You can't just overlay this, it's too late. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of fun, and we're going to do a pavement preservation quiz or game show, whatever you want to call it, and talk about different things in all the list of repairs, focusing on the preservation side, but all of these things sort of overlap a little bit, as you'll see. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. Before I get into the quiz itself, Victoria, why don't we show them the poll questions with who's there so it can help me as I'm going through the questions.
The one I work for.
So you could do how many folks at the site I work
Okay.
for. Yep, those
All right.
three
I'll just start at the
polls.
top.
Yep.
Okay. First one's open.
So how many folks are at your site? 1, 2, 3, or 4 or more? If you're clicking 4 or more, I hope you're doing good social distancing. Or maybe you're at home with your dog, your 2 kids, and the parakeet, and you counted that as 4 or more. That's okay too.
I hadn't thought about that.
Somebody I saw was posting on Facebook their coworkers, and it was their 2 dogs. Well, you got 88% there.
So
Okay,
we've got, so can you see it, the results, David?
I can actually. So
Okay, good.
most of you are by yourself. A few of you have 2 or 3, and then about 20% of you 4 or more. And again, please practice social distance. We all want to be safe. Okay, the next question that will help me quite a bit is who do you work for? So local government, state, a consulting, an engineering firm, a contractor or other. And of course, I'm always asking about people working for the weekend. Okay, we got 90% there almost, Victoria. So over half of you work for a local government. That's good. A bunch of work for the state, a few folks for consultants and contractors, and a few folks are working for the weekend, though I will admit I'm having a harder time figuring out which days of the weekend. But those are the days I don't wear a bow tie. I guess that's the way we can define it. And then finally, how long have you been at your job? Are you brand new? In other words, you just started this year, 1 to 4 years, 5 to 10 years, or greater than 10 years. Okay, that's helpful for me. So over half of you, well, actually at half of you, are greater than 10 years. So you should ace the quiz as we go through. 5 to 10 and 1 to 4, it'll depend on the question. And a few new folks, again, there's lots of folks out there to help you. So don't feel like you're new. You're just new to this particular position. Okay. Now, I noticed somebody asked how many people are on the webinar. Right now, there's 274 of you online, so we'll see how y'all do.
David, it looks like we're having that same issue from before, so you'll have to
Do the screen thing
stop.
here?
Yeah, do the screen thing. Sorry about that. Must be
It's,
something about how I set these up originally.
it's okay. It's no big deal. Okay, so our first question. PG 5228 is equal to PG 24, a super pave asphalt binder, or a new movie rating method. And you can go ahead and open the poll. It should be, I hope, an easy one. Okay. Yeah, it's a super pave asphalt binder. I mean, if you haven't used super pave or you're not familiar with it, at one time this was ooh, what is that? Well, super pave is can you see the picture again, Victoria?
Yes.
Perfect. So super pave, as soon as my computer goes to the next screen, is the way we put asphalt together now. It's actually a whole method, not just the emulsion that holds it together and the binder, but the actual method of making the mix design up. And so SuperPave is what we use these days for that. And PG graded binders are essentially performance graded. There's lots of big, long research papers on what all this SuperPave is, but essentially what they did is they said, hey, what makes good asphalt mixes? We got these new polymers, let's blend the two together and come up with this new procedure called SuperPave. Though I like actually the description, we had a guy who used to teach our asphalt paving class, and he called it mighty good pave, and I think that's a pretty good way to think about it. And it's based upon climate. Because climate, we know, makes a big difference. You're going to certainly need to have an asphalt that can handle cold weather more in northern tier states than you would in southern tier states, but also traffic. Because as traffic drives down the road, it heats it up. And you got to be careful it doesn't get too soft or bleed on you. So the idea is, in the case of a PG 52-28, it's the range of temperatures. So the 52 is the highest temperature in Celsius. Yes, Celsius, not Fahrenheit, that the pavement temperature is expected to reach. Minus 28 would be the lowest pavement temperature is expected to reach. Now, yes, there's issues of how long that period is. We're talking about a full week for the 52 and just a short period of time for the minus 28. What you need to know is what works in your area. So check with your own state specs and pick that out. And most of these mixes these days, they usually have letters at the end of it, P's and H's, for different kind of additives or different characteristics they've been adding to it. Just like getting a 2-liter bottle, you don't need to necessarily know exactly what 2 liters is. You just need to understand what works in your particular area and make sure you understand and use the right material in the right time. Okay? Next question. The percentage of asphalt and asphalt concrete is 0 to 3, 3 to 8, or 8 to 12%. So if you bring up that poll, please.
And I did notice on the last poll question that when I hit to hide the responses at the end, it looked like it went back to your screen.
Oh, we'll try that. We'll
So,
be brave.
yeah, I'll watch for a second and I'll let you know.
Okay. Okay, almost there, Victoria. We got our 80%. Okay, so 4% said 0 to 3, 68% said 3 to 8, and 28% said 8 to 12%. Okay, so I'll let you try hiding that. And?
I shouldn't have said it because it didn't work.
That's
Sorry.
okay. No big deal. It's life is about change. It's no big deal. Okay, so the answer actually is for almost all mixes. There are some exceptions, of course, but for most mixes, the actual answer is 3 to 8%. It's not that much binder. If you have too much binder, you're actually going to have a problem. It's going to be almost too soft, okay? And that can actually be a problem if you put too much asphalt into the mix. It actually doesn't take that much. Are there some mixes a little bit higher? There's some rare mixes, but most mixes we want to keep it relatively low. Whether it's cold mix or a hot mix or the more modern warm mix, the amount of asphalt is actually less than most people think, okay? Remember, you're not driving on asphalt, you're driving on rocks. It's the rocks that actually do the work. The binder is just there to hold everything together, okay? So keep that in mind when you're thinking about an overlay, okay? The quality of the aggregate is critical. In fact, it's the single most important thing. And if you're not putting enough thickness down, you're not really gaining much strength. So if you're just putting down a thin overlay, you're just doing a wearing course or a chip seal equivalent. You really need an inch or more. And I prefer 1.5 inches or 2 inches to really add structural strength, okay? So keep that in mind when you're thinking about your choices for repairs. Okay, next question. Recycling fixes the base. It's just a simple true false. Recycling fixes the base. And here comes the poll. True or false? Okay, they're seeing the results. 90% of you said it does not fix the base. Okay, so try hiding it and we'll see what happens, Victoria.
Nope.
Nope. We jinxed ourselves. It's no big deal. So the answer is, as you got right, yeah, it doesn't really fix the base. Okay? When you see the term recycling, what we're really doing is a relatively thin amount of material. Usually the asphalt layer, sometimes not even the entire asphalt layer on a roadway that's a main line that's got a lot of asphalt thickness. We're only talking 6 to 8 inches at the upper end. So we're really not doing a lot with most recycling operations. If we want to do something more extensive, we have to go to stabilization, like full depth reclamation with different additives. And we'll talk more about that with another question. But just keep that in mind. When you hear the term recycling, we're really talking about fixing the surface. And if there's drainage problems underneath, if there's a base problem, it's still going to be an issue. Now, recycling comes in lots of different flavors. You could do cold in place, hot in place, okay? There's cold stockpile, which is a very common technique used here in New York. And there's heater scarifier. Now, I have an old picture, I'll admit. It's an old picture I've got, but I actually like the old picture only because it shows two very important things. One is there's a heater. It's usually an infrared kind of heater that heats up the asphalt enough to where then when you come along with the scarifier, that looks a little bit more modern than this particular one, but it's essentially got a scarifying tool that breaks it up. And in this case, they're using something that looks like a York rake because the early heater scarifiers, that's pretty much what they were doing. The key with that particular technique, I like it, but you got to go slow. People want to go fast, but you can only put so much heat into the asphalt to soften it up enough to be able to scarify it and roll it. So if you're using heater scarifier, make them go slow. If the smoke coming off is anything but a light gray, i.e. blue, you're burning the asphalt and you're actually damaging the pavement a lot more than you'd want. And you're going to have to add back material. And the whole point of recycling is to not have to add back in too much material. Okay, next question. Pavement preservation time. Doing nothing is a good maintenance technique. True or false? Doing nothing is a good maintenance technique. True or false? Okay. Almost everybody says doing nothing is a bad maintenance technique. Okay, let's try hiding it. Of course, it's probably going to have to redo the screen, aren't I?
Yep.
And now I'm about to throw people for a loop because everybody says it's a not a good pavement maintenance technique. And I'm going to disagree because I think doing nothing is a great pavement technique. Okay? I would rather do nothing in this particular photograph than put an overlay on it that's not going to last or try to crack repair it. Almost impossible. I mean, if you think about it, how would I crack repair that? Oh my goodness, I'd be going crazy. Okay? Doing nothing is actually an easy technique. It's cheap. Okay? And you can use it on your good roads and you can use it on your bad roads. In fact, every one of you right now is doing nothing. It is sometimes better to defer work than to do a bad repair. Okay? So it needs to be in your toolkit. You need to think sometimes we're going to do nothing. So if you got a road that looks like this, you're going to do nothing. But that doesn't mean you aren't going to be out there inspecting it. You're not going to be looking for problems. But it may be at the end of the day, the best solution is to actually do nothing. Okay? Now, there's not a poll question for this one, but I hope you know the answer. The three most important things to remember when maintaining a road are, somebody in the question pod. We'll see if somebody can give me the answer in the question pod. I'll give you about 5 seconds. We'll see if somebody can get the answer. The three most important things to remember when maintaining a road are.
I think they're still reeling after the answer to that last question.
I know. Hey, we got someone. We got it. We got it. We got it. Oh, that's good. I like it. People got it. Yeah. Drainage, drainage, and drainage. If you take care of the drainage, most of your problems go away. In fact, almost all the premature failures that we get are because we didn't handle the drainage. Now, a lot of times when we talk to especially the public and the elected officials, they go, oh, this is poor drainage, where you got a culvert that's too small or something like that. But drainage, if you think about it, includes crack repairs, it includes poor bases, it includes everything in our roadway. We got to have good drainage, and I'll show you some more examples of that as we play around with the quiz. But the single most important thing is drainage by far, so keep that in mind. Okay, calcium chloride stabilization. I said I'd talk to you a little bit more about stabilization. So calcium chloride stabilization reduces the fines percentage in our base that we're stabilizing, reduces the frost susceptibility of that base material, or reduces the fines content percentage and the frost susceptibility. So we'll do a poll and see what y'all think.
I had to combine your last option because it was too long for the polling software.
Okay, no problem. So if you don't remember, reducing both of the above is okay.
And we're not tracking your answers, so just vote your gut.
Vote your gut. Okay, so 2/3 of you say it reduces both. 1/3 almost says it reduces the frost susceptibility, and a few talk about reducing the fines percentage. So after you hide that, I'll flip the screen on and off real quick.
You're good to go.
Okay. So the answer is it reduces the frost susceptibility. It does not change the fines content. It's a salt. Okay. Now there are times when you'll see people say, well, we don't use salt. I've seen that advertised, especially in some of the western states. We don't use salt in the winter. We use calcium or magnesium chloride. Got a trick for you. They're still salts. If we're doing stabilization, there's actually lots of different ways we can do stabilization. Okay? Now we can use asphalt as well in a stabilization, but the two I want to talk about right now are mechanical and chemical. If you're doing mechanical stabilization, that's a fancy term for either over-densifying or bringing in some aggregate to reduce the fines by blending in clean stuff with the dirty stuff, and the average has less fines in it. Because remember, if we reduce the fines, we have better quality for drainage. Chemical stabilization can include everything from calcium and asphalt and lime and fly ash and cement, but they all do slightly different things. The asphalt emulsion doesn't actually lock everything together. It just takes some of the fines and binds them up so they aren't being affected by the water. Lime, fly ash, and cement can actually cement things together if you have the right chemical makeup. But if you add too much, you can actually have a problem with cracking, shrinkage especially. And then finally the salts, calcium, magnesium, and in some cases people even use sodium chloride to chemically stabilize. What they're really doing is reducing the frost susceptibility. Much like when you make ice cream, you lower the freezing point, and so therefore you reduce the negative effects during the freezing and thawing periods. You don't eliminate it, and you still have a high fines content, but just keep in mind they have different purposes for different operations. And do me a favor, when you do the calculations of what you need, don't add extra. People want to do that. Oh, if 5% is good, 8% would be better. If you add too much, you can actually create problems, making it soft, making it crack, and making it actually negative effects from having too much. Okay? Now we're talking about pavement preservation, but I just can't do anything without talking a little bit about safety. So we're going to do the safety question now. And the worker in the hole is obviously not a supervisor, an OSHA inspector, or not following good safety practices. So we'll do a poll. I think this one should be easy after the last two, Victoria.
I would hope. Someone has a sense of humor.
Well, it's got to have a little bit of fun. We can't be totally serious. Okay, almost to 80%. Okay, so we're going to show the results. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a pretty easy one. Only a couple of you decided that it wasn't the supervisor and OSHA inspector. Okay, go ahead and hide that, Victoria.
Oh, it came back up.
It came back up?
Yes.
Woohoo!
Ooh.
So obviously that worker in the hole is not following good safety practices. Okay, as I had said in one of the sessions we did last week, there's a whole bunch of OSHA violations here. Please do me a favor, stay safe. Wear your proper equipment if you're flagging traffic. Make sure you have a ladder to get out of the hole, that you properly support your utilities, like in this case, a gas line, that you don't be standing at the edge where it could actually collapse, that you've got somebody watching, that you've got good housekeeping practices. At the end of the day, we all want to get home safely. And the best way to do that is think first who you're trying to protect, and that would be yourself. Okay? Now, total reconstruction is an option that we sometimes have to look at in our list. Now, I know we're talking about pavement preservation, but at some point we have to think about total reconstruction. Why is it last? Well, it's very expensive, but it may be the only option. And the nice thing is that you got a brand new road when you're done. One of the times I look at reconstruction and I'll tend to bump it up in terms of what I'm doing is when I have to do utility work like we just showed. If I've got to do a lot of utility work anyway and I'm doing a lot of digging, it's a good time to think about reconstruction. So a roadway that is close to needing reconstruction, maybe I go ahead and do it when I'm doing utility work. Okay, time for back our quiz. 811 must be called before any work, before using powered equipment that will dig into the ground, after hitting a utility line, or to report a non-emergency. And we'll do a poll, see what y'all think.
Interesting split on the answers.
Yes, that's why we're doing it, having a little bit of fun. Okay. So of the folks who voted, almost 2/3 of you said before any work. About 1/3 of you said before using powered equipment. Nobody said after hitting utility line, and then one person said to report a non-emergency. Okay, so go ahead and hide that for me, Victoria.
It worked.
And, hey, we'll just stay with it. The actual answer is before using powered equipment that will dig into the ground. Not any work on the roadway. Okay, but the idea is if you're going to puncture the ground, you need to have called 811. Okay, the rules vary by state. What's the rule in Ohio, Victoria, for when you have to call? How far ahead do you have to call?
I believe it's 48 hours, but I'll look it up real quick. I think somebody
So
might have put it in the.
every state varies quite a bit. Okay.
Nope, someone said 3 days in Connecticut.
Yep.
Oh,
New
and
York State.
someone made a comment about you can puncture the ground without power equipment.
Yeah, that's
With a
true.
hand shovel.
With a hand
Yeah.
shovel. You generally,
So
in most states, don't have to call 811 if you're only using hand equipment. However, you're allowed to call them if you're concerned you're going to be near a utility, and it's still okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I've got responses here from other folks. New Hampshire 72 hours, 48 hours in Idaho, and in Vermont, someone confirmed 48 in Ohio. And I know in Ohio we have the slogan, that you should call 811 before you dig. So that would
And
cover any type of
people
equipment,
say
whether it's
shovel
hand or
digging.
power.
And
Yeah.
only reason why in most states, even states that have a shovel digging rule, if you're truly only just doing surface work, uh, you would be okay. But here's the thing, and this is what gets people in trouble, even in states that only require it when you're using powered equipment. If it's powered, you should be calling because you're thinking, oh, I'm only doing a surface dressing with a York rake, as an example, like I showed with the stabilizer, with a York rake, because I'm not digging. No, that's still powered equipment, and you'd be amazed how shallow a line can be. So always better to call if you're not sure, okay? If you know your rules, you're going to be better off. And do me a favor, at the end of the day, I don't care what the rules are. Don't assume. Be safe anyway. okay? Because here's a case. You can see a fire in the distance. There, of course, the people showed up from the press and they took photographs and video. You can actually see down here, there's a utility line that was marked. They had called ahead properly. The line had been marked and it was further off the road, but they had a stabilizer. And it turns out with that stabilizer, they found out the hard way the utility line was not off the road, and it was not down to 3 feet that was on the spec. It was only down to about 8 inches. And you dig down 8 inches, you got yourself a problem, okay? Now, so by the way, for those of you who marked for calling for all work, do you call for mowing? I'm seeing if anybody puts it. No, you don't. But if I don't call for mowing, isn't that all work? Next question. Sealing is used for cracks that are non-working. True or false? You can bring that one up. Mailbox post, by the way, yes, you should call for mailbox post. Okay.
It's
Sealing
just
is used.
fascinating to see all the answers from people all around the country.
It is. That's why we like doing it. I like these multi-state ones. It's sort of fun to see. Only if you break the plane for the last one. You don't mow the road surface. Yeah, it's always an interesting question. When should you call?
All right, we're
Okay.
almost over 80%. We're just aiming for over 80% on the responses on these polls because we want to get a good feel, good mix. So a few more people vote. All right, here we go.
Here we go. Okay, so it's a pretty good split. 55% said true, 45% said false. Okay. So let's go back and we'll see if it keeps me going here. You're going to hide it?
It didn't work this time. Oh my goodness.
I just
I have
have
to
to laugh.
chuckle at technology, yeah.
You do. It's okay. So the answer is false. Okay. Now, I actually looped together all crack repairs. Okay. There's two types of crack repairs. They fall in the category of sealing or they fall in the category of filling. A sealing of a crack is for working cracks, cracks that are moving, usually thermally. Okay. And you need to seal them because you're trying to prevent the intrusion of water and debris into the crack. Because if it's a moving crack and you don't seal it, when it gets filled up as it moves, it's going to actually compress and do more damage. With filling, that would be only used for non-working cracks because you're not actually going to seal everything. You're just going to reduce the infiltration of the water and try to reinforce a little bit the edge of the pavement. Okay. And there's, of course, tons of techniques that are out there and available to you, from flush filling to overband to reservoirs. But again, if it's a moving crack, it's worth it to spend the extra money on the little more expensive sealing materials, the rubberized materials, the elastomeric kind of materials, versus if it's just a crack that's cracked because of age, you could fill it with an asphalt emulsion and it would be fine. Okay? But do me a favor, pick good candidates. The one on the left, I wouldn't want to be a motorcyclist on a rainy day when I hit that. The one on the right was a very expensive, high-end rubberized material put in with a router. Everything was done well. However, they cleaned it with an air compressor without a oil-water separator and blew water right along the edge of the seam. And of course, there was no bonding. And we were pulling the stuff out by hand. If you're going to do a router, are you going to do any sealing? Make sure you clean the crack. I actually prefer a heat lance to really get it nice and dry. So that's very important to keep that in mind. And here's another good reason why you want to pick good candidates. In this particular case, they did a, I'd say, crack. I'm not sure what it would be called because they obviously didn't fill the cracks. And the day after I took the photograph, they overlaid it. And right here, you can actually see water coming out into the roadway. So pick good candidates. Remember earlier I said doing nothing is a good repair choice? Be a lot better repair choice here to do nothing than to waste the money on this kind of crack repair. If you're paying somebody by the gallon, however, and you don't have good inspection, this is what you might get, okay? Okay, next question. The most cost-effective patching technique is throw and go, throw and roll, semi-permanent, or spray patch. Okay, you can bring that up.
And you have a comment in the question box.
Okay. Let's get this poll question done, and then I'll go back to the comment. Okay.
I like the split on this question, the answers we're getting.
Well, that's okay. Okay, Victoria, you got really close to, there we go. So quite a split. Almost evenly split between throw and roll and semi-permanent, with spray patch just behind. And only a few of you said throw and go. Okay. Now, gonna hide that.
It did not work.
Of course. Okay. So the answer is, what do you think? Well, good news is for all of you except for one choice, you've been right. It depends on the situation. As the comment says, depends on the material to some extent. Yeah, absolutely. It depends upon conditions. In the winter, when the plants are closed, a throw and roll is actually very, very cost effective if you do it right. Semi-permanent, it can also be very, very cost effective if you do it right. And if you have spray patch equipment available, also very cost effective. It turns out they've studied this, and you can run the math yourself. All three of them are actually pretty close in terms of price if you do them right. Throw and go, where you just pop it in the hole and drive away, that doesn't last at all, because the bane of our existence is potholes. Okay? Now, we want to make sure potholes are filled in. Even now, during our crisis period, it's a critical activity. We got to keep the potholes filled. Now, have a little bit of humor with it, but it's a serious situation, and obviously it can be a safety issue as well. Now, in terms of patching, there's cold mix with throw and roll, where you roll it with your truck. There's hot with semi-permanent spray patching, though the spray patch is sort of in the middle. It's an emulsion that's heated up, so it could maybe even be considered warm. Okay, but do me a favor, when you're going to do patching, do it right. We don't want to have that famous motto on the side of your truck. We do it nice because we do it twice. Or in this case, 3 times. I got to watch them fill this. 3 different agencies actually tried to fill this little slot. All 3 of them did it the same way. They threw some material in the hole and they walked away, and it didn't last. Put it in the hole if in the winter you have to go out and patch. Use a polymer mix and roll over it with your truck tire. Okay? It really does make a difference. You can get 80 to 90% of your patches to last through the spring, even here in the north, if you do it right the first time. But when the weather conditions warm up, think about semi-permanent and doing something that's going to have a little bit longer life to it. Now, before I move on to the next question, somebody had said on that last one with all the cracks that it might be a candidate for something called a scrub seal. And a scrub seal is actually a pretty cool technique. It's a form of a wearing course where you actually scrub essentially the emulsion in with a broom to help penetrate, and it works pretty well on roads of low to moderate volume. We don't have a lot of trucks and a lot of movement. So you want to make sure you don't have a really poor base underneath, because obviously, just like recycling, you're only going to be doing some work on the surface. And because it's already broken up almost, it's only really going to keep the surface alive. If you've got a lot of movement, scrub seals are not going to necessarily solve the problem, but they are a good candidate. We should add them into our toolkit. Okay, next question on our list. All wearing courses, speaking of surface treatments, can waterproof the pavement, restore skid resistance, restore the oxidized surface, and true and level minor ruts. So Victoria's going to bring up the poll. You can actually check on more than one. So,
oh my gosh, I closed it accidentally. I'm so
closed
sorry.
it. Oh no, and we can't
Anybody
go back
voted?
here. You
I
can't
can't.
go
So you're
back.
just gonna have to tell them the answers, David. I'm sorry.
Well, why don't you hide it?
Let me do that. I have to do the share and hide real quick. So you guys are all off the hook on this one, but your slide came back up.
Well, that's good. That's good. It's okay. It's technology. It's okay. I'll just make a Buckeye joke at your expense at some point.
Thanks, David.
So the answer is, by the way, if you had been able to vote, all wearing courses will waterproof the pavement. All wearing courses will restore the skid resistance. All wearing courses will reduce the oxidized surface. That's their primary purpose. But when you hear people say, oh, well, I can fill minor ruts, some wearing courses will, okay? Chip seals, no. Slurry seals, no. But NovaChip and MicroPave will. Micropaving, where they add a polymer essentially to a slurry seal, was designed originally to fill ruts on the German Autobahn. It actually can fill minor ruts, but we're talking minor, okay? We're not talking big ruts. And a lot of people think you can fill a rut with a thin hot mix overlay. The problem with trying to do that with a hot mix overlay is when you roll it, it'll tend to push back into the rut, and the rut really comes right back, okay? So it's something you have to keep in mind. And yes, the comment about moving ruts, if you got a moving rut, you got to be real careful with your wearing course because all it's going to do is move along with it, okay? So you need to have a stable platform. The rut needs to be because of age and time more than an unstable mix, okay? Because if it's moving, it doesn't matter what you put down. There's a picture of a micropaving. It looks a lot like a slurry, okay? Because that's what it is. It's just a different chemical composition, some polymers to help fill in the ruts. But if the ruts are deep enough, you're going to actually want to do 2 passes, a rut pass and then the final pass. Here's a NovaChip, okay? And if you're wondering in the case of the NovaChip, the thing I like about this particular photograph is you can actually see they had done the crack repairs beforehand. In fact, if you're going to do crack repairs, try to give them a season to cure out. Don't just put them down and come back a week later because you can actually have problems as the crack repairs are still trying to cure out, okay? And yes, you could try to T&L first with the overlay, but then it's not just a thin overlay. You're actually doing a true and leveling course first to fill in the ruts. And by the way, when you do that, roll it with a rubber tired roller, not a steel drum. Because if you do a steel drum roller, you can bridge over it and not get the density that you want in the rut filling operations. So here's what one looks like when you're done. They look fine. I like wearing courses. I think we need to do. Is micropave the same as microsurface? Yeah, there's just different terms. Here in New York State, for instance, we don't actually call it NovaChip, even though that's the brand name. In our spec, it's called paver place surface treatment, which actually in some respects is a good way to think about it. Okay, next question. Pavement preservation. The emulsion is brown before it breaks because it's a bad photograph because the stone is brown. Okay, Victoria, poll time.
I didn't double tap this time.
Yay. Okay.
And while everyone's voting, I want to mention that we will be sending out certificates when the webinar is complete, but I do ask that you please give me a week to get those out because it's just me sending them out. And I'm a little bit behind with the number of webinars we've been doing, but I will get it out to you.
Okay, we're not quite to 80% yet. We're getting close. Okay, that's good enough, Victoria. We can move on. So 3/4 of you said before it breaks, 5% because it's a bad photograph. It's not my best, I'll admit that. Actually, I got it from somebody else. Because the stone is brown. Okay, so hide that. We'll see what the actual answer is.
You're going to have to do the sharing again.
That's fine. Okay, so the answer is it's brown because that's the color of an emulsion before it breaks. Okay, an emulsion is essentially a mixture of water and oil. When you think about it, it's like mayonnaise or salad dressing. It's a mixture, and because of the way light works through it, it looks brown. Okay, here's the thing about emulsions. When you're trying to, especially wearing courses, when you're putting an emulsion down, if you try to put down rocks on top of an emulsion that's gone and broken, it's not going to stick. You really want to get the stones down before it turns black, okay? In other words, if it's brown, put them down. If it's black, you're going to have to send it back. I have a picture that I got sent to me. It was in a Federal Highway slide deck. It's a nice picture, and for years I've been using it, and it's a beautiful picture of a chip seal spreader. And you can see the stones and all that. And one day I got a copy of it I found a copy of it that was in color. And I looked at it and I'm like, uh-oh, look at the color in that photograph. That's a nice, good black. If it's black, you're not going to get anywhere near the amount of sticking that you really want to have. You could roll it till the cows come home. You're going to lose too much stone. You got to get the stone down while it's brown. And in the case of a chip seal, that means you need to have that spreader right up to the distributor truck. Don't let them get far away. Our old director, Lynn Irwin, always liked to say, you want to tie a rope between the nose of the driver of the distributor and the nose of the guy driving the spreader so they don't get too far apart. Okay? Next question. Which is not a cause of pavement distress? Traffic, temperature, moisture, age, and possums. Okay, yeah, I know it's an easy one, but what the heck? Let's have a little fun. If you're awake.
Now, David, I almost took issue with the way you spelled possums. I tend to feel there ought to be an O in front of it. Opossums.
Opossums? Well, I did grow up in the deep south, and so we just call them possums. And they get pretty big. Okay? But
They do around here too.
they like cat food, by the way. My dad found that out the hard way.
Oh my
He had a
gosh.
couple of cats, and they love cat food.
I have to share this vote now. Here we go.
Go ahead. Okay. So 96% of you, whether it's a possum or an opossum, you're pretty happy with it. But a few of you voted for something else. So let's talk about that just a little bit. Go ahead and hide it and see what I have to push.
You have to share one more time.
Yeah, it's okay. Because I think that's the last quiz question. Opossum is only in Ohio. I like that. That's good. From a guy from the deep south, of course. So the answer is, of course, as we'd expect, everything can cause pavement distress, except possums with a couple of exceptions, okay? Sometimes critters can climb in underneath and actually damage the roadway. We actually had some woodchucks that actually did enough tunneling underneath one of our roads that it actually had some settlement when I worked for a county. So normally we wouldn't expect possums to be a primary issue, but do me a favor. When you're looking at your roadway, get the possums out of the way, okay? This is a famous picture from Arizona of the Not My Job Award, okay? The idea at the end of the day is just about everything makes a difference. Traffic, obviously, because the more traffic, the more bending, the more damage. Temperature makes a difference as things get soft and cold, especially when it gets really cold. Asphalt can actually crack. In the hot part of the summer, it can rut just because of temperature, especially with asphalts. Moisture, as we said earlier, drainage is the only things that really matter. And of course, age. Older pavements tend to be near the end of their life, and so over time, all pavements deteriorate, okay? No, I'm not going to repeat that comment, but it's a good one. So just remember this as you're looking at your pavement. Pavement distress, there's tons of pavement distress. There's fatigue cracking, there's block cracking, there's all kind of cracking that goes on. There's rutting, there's corrugations, there's depressions, potholes. What causes them? Think about it. It's those 4 factors, okay? And they're all exacerbated by a lack of drainage and heavy trucks. But at the end of the day, do me a favor, fix the cause of the distress, not the effect, okay? So there's not a poll question for this, but I'm hoping you know the answer to it now. So we'll see if somebody pops it into the box here. What is the best pavement preservation technique? We'll see if they come up with it here. Plow, snow plow. In this case, yes, you would have to plow it. Yeah. But generally, what is the best overall for all pavement preservation? Drainage, improving drainage. I like that one. Doing nothing. It's easy and cheap. Yep, that's good. All of them. Yep, you need to have everything in your toolbox. There's some good. Hey, we got it. There we go. The right treatment at the right place at the right time. Yeah. So you've got to make sure you have the right treatment in the right place at the right time. You have to have a plan in place for asset management and for other activities. And you have to be able to adjust, as we're all having to do right now. So right now, the best pavement for this particular road would be to plow it at some point, though. I actually live on, my house is actually on the back right there. You can sort of see it in the distance. It's the last road plowed in the city of Ithaca, New York. So what? I walk to work. I'm okay with it, though I would love to walk to work. I walk from my downstairs living room to my upstairs office. But the best pavement preservation is the one that works for that place at the right time. Okay. Now a little bit of humor to end the session for you. The Ziggy cartoon. I like Ziggy's again. Got permission to share it. Don't bother getting up. All the streets are closed for repair today. Okay. In fact, some agencies are taking advantage of the fact there's less traffic and doing some of these kind of repairs. Something to think about. I want everybody to be safe, stay well, do what you need to do that's essential to help us get back and forth to work and school, and hopefully not the hospitals, but that is going to happen. But stay well. And we got a few minutes, so if somebody has any questions or comments, pop them into the box. We'll try to answer them for you. Otherwise, when you're done, there'll be a survey, right, Victoria?
Yes, there will. Absolutely. And David, we want to thank you so much for partnering on these webinars. I know that you are going to be hosting some through the Cornell platform next week, and we are more than happy to send those out on the LTAP listserv here in Ohio as well, because I know everyone has enjoyed your webinars very much.
We like doing them, and I actually like the fact we're getting multiple states. I like that. It's sort of fun to see. So.
Looks like you've got a question there on
I do.
rubber chip sealing.
But rubber chip sealing. So I just want to make sure there's a couple of different techniques for rubber chip sealing. Is this where they're just adding a little bit of rubber powder into the chip seal, or are you talking about the ones where they're actually putting big rubber chips down, almost a paving type process? Rubber coated stone. Okay. Like anything, it's a technique that has its place. If you put too much rubber down, you actually may get some bonding issues that you have to come up with. Okay. I like the idea of trying things out, but the key there is you don't want to have too much of it. It doesn't take that much. The benefit theoretically is it has a little better elastic properties. The disadvantage, however, is sometimes it can actually move quite a bit. So it's something to keep in mind. If you've got a lot of extra rubber to use it, I actually like the rubberized pavement. I think that's actually a good way to go, because for walking on it, it's actually a pretty good surface. Do I have multiple photos of roads that should not be crack sealed? And could you send to me? Well, most of the ones in here are ones that should not be crack sealed. The way I like to think about this, I'll tell you what, let me go back here and pull one of them up. Let me find the one I need, that city street. There it is. Okay, obviously this is one that's well beyond it. If you think about it this way, imagine if I was going to do a crack repair and I tried to draw in all the cracks. Okay, if I try to draw in all these cracks, how much time and effort is that going to take? If I was to combine all of those together, would it be thicker than 1 inch wide? If it is, it's probably too late. So general rule of thumb is at most 3 parallel cracks, and obviously here I have a lot more. And yes, Larry popped in there a really good idea. Go to the roadresource.org. They have a whole bunch of pictures. The National Center for Pavement Preservation has them as well. So there's some really good stuff out there on when to crack repair and when not crack repair. And there's also a very good SHARP document from the Federal Highway Administration that's available to talk about when to do certain kind of crack repairs. And in that book that I mentioned earlier on pavement maintenance that we have on our website, we have stuff. Okay.
So if we And so we will be downloading the questions that came in through the question pod, and I will sending those over to David. So if there's anyone on there that you still want to follow up on, we're happy to do that, but we want to make sure we're respectful of everybody's time. So are there any more questions you feel you've got enough time to still answer, David?
Yeah, I'm just looking to see here, scrolling down through. We talked about that. You're going to get certificates. We're going to mail that. Emulsion breaking. When placing a tack coat prior to overlay, don't you want it to break first so you don't trap the moisture? Actually, it turns out breaking is not the same as curing whenever you're using an emulsion. When it turns black, it's just separated into its constituent components, but it hasn't actually evaporated yet. That's curing. You're not going to be able to wait long enough for the emulsion to cure in tack coats. So the way those are designed is there's a very small amount of material for one thing, and there's not a lot of moisture in there. There are some tackless ones that use less moisture, but no, you don't actually have to be super worried about getting rid of the moisture on it. But check with the manufacturers. Some of them, they want them to break. Some of them, they don't. Okay. But the reality is you're probably okay with them. Don't worry about so much about the brown. Make sure you have a good quality of tack coat on there. And don't use too much, but don't use zero. It's the cheapest insurance you can possibly have. Let's see what else we got. With crack sealing materials, would you recommend to seal cracks prior for micropaving? Yes, absolutely. If it's a good candidate for crack repairs, seal them, but try to seal them at least one season in advance. So if you were doing sealing right now, if your cracks, or even filling if it was a non-moving crack, I wouldn't actually want to put my micropaving down until mid to late summer, though obviously before Labor Day in most of the northern tier states. Give yourself 2 or 3 months for it to cure out if at all possible. How do you decide how to split between limited funds for maintenance and resurfacing? That's what asset management is. I'm a huge fan of asset management, so you can actually figure out and prioritize when you're trying to split between those two options. And actually, yes, we are looking at doing a webinar on that later in the rest of the spring here. Okay. Sounds good. What's the website for pavement preservations? The one was put in there earlier was, I got to find the actual link. Roadresource.org is one word, roadresource.org, or just search for the National Center for Pavement Preservation. Okay, and both of those come up. We recommend letting the tack coat break. I don't actually disagree with you. And yes, for tackless tacks, you definitely want to do that because they're designed that way. Because it will track otherwise because it hasn't had time to set up enough where you don't drive on it and it comes back up. If you ever considered it.
David, would you be open to sending out a follow-up email with links to all the different references and resources?
Okay. Yeah, I'll make a list.
I appreciate it. And Jeff Lawrence put a comment in there that FHWA has good info as well. So
they do have some good stuff. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I want to, like I said, be respectful of everyone's time. And thank you again, David, so much for doing this. We're so happy to have hosted you on the webinar. Please make sure to answer the follow-up survey that'll come up when we end the webinar. And please stay safe. Have a good rest of your day.
And I'll look forward to seeing the questions from you, Victoria, and I'll follow up with folks.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.